So it was, it's been a long time since I had short hair. So thank you to my IT support here who is graciously going to forward my slides for me. I appreciate that. Dawn, I just wanted to say that your sharing of your joy and your concern is something that I feel privileged that I get to do every day from people in our community through my role at the foundation, where patients and families often will share their joys and their concerns. I think what's important is that our healthcare system is certainly not perfect, but it's something that we tend to, as Canadians, really honor and cherish. And my role is through community generosity that we're able to enhance the quality of healthcare we can provide at Bluewater Health. So I overheard someone say, and I think she's going to talk about Bluewater Health. I did want to just preface that I don't work for the hospital. Bluewater Health Foundation is a separate registered charitable organization. I am very much in sync with the hospital, but probably my presentation is going to be much more aligned with the impact of philanthropy and community support as opposed to all of the ins and outs and nuances of healthcare in our community, but I'll try my best to answer questions if there are any about that component. Bluewater Health Foundation has been a registered charity since 2003. We exist to serve Bluewater Health and its capabilities to care for people in our community through donations, community support. We have a very wonderful and caring community. Before I was with the Hospital Foundation, if you're from Sarnia, you may know that there was a long time coming. The new Bluewater Health was actively being fundraised for many, many years, actually in tandem with a Sarnia General fundraising campaign, a St. Joe's fundraising campaign, a CEH fundraising campaign, and then there came a merger that resulted in the development of Bluewater Health. And with that, the foundations in Sarnia, specifically Sarnia General and St. Joe's, came together, and that is how Bluewater Health Foundation was formed in 2003. And they raised, as a community, over $40 million to build and upgrade the Sarnia site. That was an expectation and a component of government projects. Hospital foundations do have expectations when there's a significant capital project that they do need to raise X amount of dollars based on the overarching campaign. The hospital budget was over $400 million, and based on that formula, the expectation is that we needed to come together and raise over $40 million, which our community did. So we're truly grateful. And go on to the next slide for me, please. Our mission and vision is that we envision a healthy community sustained through a culture of generosity, and we create, inspire, and cultivate those expressions of generosity to equip Bluewater Health in its care for our community. So for more than a century, we have been, in our founding hospitals, have been providing healthcare to the community of Sarnia Lambton. We recognize and we actually are grateful that we do have in close proximity to us incredible acute care centers in London, Windsor, and Toronto that many people will have to go to and will always have to go to. Bluewater Health is actually designated a community hospital, and as such, there are certain treatments and modalities and interventions that we'll never be able to offer in our community, not because we don't, but because we're not designated that way. Our funding doesn't support some of those interventions, and fortunately, because we are in close proximity to London for some of those interventions, probably similar to Dawn's experience. But we really believe that we have a lot to celebrate at Bluewater Health. From welcoming your new baby into the world to end-of-life care for your loved ones, and all of your important moments. This is kind of our commercial. Bluewater Health really is the heart of the community. And we have seen an incredible increase in some of the numbers of care and interventions we have been able to provide locally, not just in Sarnia, but also in Petrolia, specifically in response to the redevelopment project of the new build with new technology. We're able to better recruit and attract physicians and specialists to our community. We were able to attract an anesthesiologist full-time, and that probably much more so than population. We know our population in Sarnia Lambton hasn't really been actively growing, but a significant increase in babies being born. And we really liken that to the fact that moms in labor can now access 24-hour epidurals, which we know many people were leaving Sarnia Lambton to go to London to deliver their babies with support of medication and intervention. We also have a more equipped NICU. It's quite small, but we do have one. So in the past, women who were expecting multiples were sent to London for their care and treatment, and that's no longer the case unless it is a very, very high risk case, then they would go to London. So we are seeing over 1,000 beautiful babies born at Bluewater Health, When I started at the foundation, about 700 were born. So I think that really speaks volumes to the quality of care that our maternal infant child department is able to provide. Go to the next slide, please. These are some highlights from our last year. And of course, everybody knows this, but the last couple of years have been wonky, to say the least. Our world's changed. Healthcare completely had to change their efforts from being able to provide the day-to-day care that they do to pandemic response and intervention. My own office shut down. We are a non-clinical space in the hospital, and we moved remotely and digitally for almost 2 years, off and on. You know, with every outbreak, we were, oh, come back, and then they kicked us out again, and come back, kicked us out again. We're back. Hopefully, we're staying. We are located right inside the main hospital hallway, across from the coffee shop, and we love that area. We love people coming in and saying hello and meeting and greeting us and sharing experiences with us, and also coming in and making generous donations. But really, we're just thrilled to be back on site. When the pandemic hit, I never in my life thought that I would be actively knocking on people's doors and businesses' doors to donate spare masks, gloves, PPE of all sorts. I remember when this first started, and I won't say any names, but certain leaders at the hospital, I think, were very hopeful. They had been through the SARS experience, and they're like, oh, we got this. This is no big deal. And I was like, okay, I hope so. And I had just returned from Europe, where things were really starting to, while I was on my family vacation with my mom taking us back to her hometown in England, a worldwide pandemic was declared. But when you were coming back through Pearson, they didn't care unless you weren't in Italy or China, I think really was their token 2 questions at that time before the world shut down. But I think I spent about 3 months working out of my car, driving all over Lambton County, picking up PPE, handmade masks, handmade caps for our staff to cover their heads. And that is an example of philanthropy. I think that's really important, and it probably isn't even in any of my slides, but philanthropy is not just about a cash transaction. It's about so much more. It's about giving and receiving, and it's also giving and receiving what you are able to give. One person's treasure is something that, if they're willing to gift and make a difference through the donation of a mask. We had people that were going around their homes and cutting up blankets and cutting up pillowcases and making masks to ensure that the staff and patients at Bluewater Health were well protected. And that's something I'll never, ever forget. Homemade hand sanitizers by companies, big corporate companies to small companies making it themselves, hairdressers that were forced to shut down, saying, hey, for some reason we have a lot of gloves because we dye a lot of people's hair. They're yours for the taking. And we were actually able to secure so much PPE that we were actually able to outfit some of our community partners outside of the hospital, because the overwhelming response was just pretty remarkable. And then that led us into kind of getting back into our day-to-day with fundraising, and the response was overwhelming. Charities continue to struggle in post recovery, I guess we would call it. We're very closely monitoring the state of affairs of our state of the economy right now. Inflation is at an all-time high. Groceries are at an all-time high. We rely on a variety of levels of donations, and we have seen over the last year a decline in giving across the country. They have seen a decline in giving. The people that are capable of giving the big gifts are continuing to give, but they're not able to give at a sustainable rate that's going to equip charities to be successful if something doesn't give. So we're very hopeful something will give, but we're not economy specialists, so we cross our fingers. But community support has been wonderful. Some highlights is this is last year. We've actually sold well over 100,000 this year. Last year we sold almost 92,000 Dream Home Lottery tickets. We sold over 50-50 lottery, almost 340,000 50-50 tickets. I got to call the winner and told him last year he got, just a nice $150,000 check. And he's like, what? And then he started crying, and he was like, you have no idea, this came at the perfect time. And he gave it to his daughter, who was actually in need, which was beautiful. Lotteries are unique. They're not donations. They are a chance to win and make a difference. But we're truly grateful. Our Dream Home Lottery for over 28 years has injected over $8 million into Bluewater Health, and we're incredibly grateful. If you have bought a ticket, thank you. We draw on Wednesday, so it's a very exciting time in our office. We received 621 online donations, so that's over 2 a day online. We generated almost 1,000 new donors giving to our hospital foundation. 136 grateful patient donations. Those come from individuals that make a donation after they've received care at Bluewater Health. It's certainly not an expectation, but it is something that we monitor. And we received 75 Heart of Gold donations. And that's a new program that we offer where we allow people in the community, regardless if a cash donation comes with it, but to share their experience of care, to highlight a staff or a physician, volunteer, or a department. And it's been really, really successful. And I would say that, you know, again, our healthcare system is not perfect. We know in the media right now, our healthcare system is in a crisis. We know that people are leaving positions and they're not being replaced. We are actively always recruiting new physicians, new nurses, but we're seeing an exodus of nursing staff across the country. And that's just, I think, for a lot of different reasons that I probably can't specifically speak to, but I'm the daughter of a nurse and the sister of a nurse, and they've never seen anything like this. So when we're able to help boost morale, if it's a little touch point like, hey, you know, Alan made a donation, and with that donation came this beautiful story of care that you provided. The response is always, I was just doing my job. And I think to your point, they do care. And even in tough times like pandemics and staffing crises, and working so much and being declined vacation requests, all those types of things, they do care. And that's why they do the work that they do. And we're truly fortunate. We raised almost $500,000 from third-party events. That is when other people host events or plan something and allocate those funds to our community hospital. A great example would be there's an annual golf tournament that's held by a family in our community in honor of their mother, sister, wife who died from breast cancer over 25 years ago. Over 25 years, a golf tournament has raised over $1 million for mammography at Bluewater Health, and half of additional amount going to LHSC for research. So it's a very important golf tournament in our community, and we're thankful. And then also we have some new social fundraising, which is where people, you know, do events through, you know, I'm doing a walk, and if you want to donate to me online, you can. Or Chris Molyneux is a young saxophone player in our community, and he did 2 concerts during the during COVID, where he raised funds and encouraged people to watch his concert, and then they would donate that money back to Bluewater Health Foundation. And go to the next slide, please. I'm going to talk, I feel like I should be watching the time. I talk a lot, so I apologize, but I wanted to highlight, I'm going to highlight 2 of our most significant fundraising campaigns and priorities that we have recently achieved through community support and generosity. The first is called Youth Wellness Hubs Ontario. You may have heard it in the community referred to as Access Open Minds. This is a partnership between Bluewater Health, St. Clair Child and Youth, and Canadian Mental Health Association. And it is a youth mental health intervention treatment center that will be located in the former CIBC on Front Street. Very intentionally located centrally and accessibly. It's for people 11 to 25. That age range is very specifically identified by experts and treatment providers in the youth mental health field, that those are the times when the most significant changes happen in our lives. We leave elementary school, we go to high school, we leave high school, we go to university, we graduate, or we go to work. And there's so many things that happen during that time frame. And that is also when youth are most at risk for experiencing mental health issues and struggles. This is a model that's been based off of, it actually came from Australia, and New Zealand is where it came first, and then Ireland. They've kind of set the way. I think in Australia it's called Headspace, and they've actually been doing this for many, many years, and they've been monitoring the outcomes for many years. And in addition to being able to access your mental health treatment in a community-based setting, as opposed to an acute care setting or an institutional area, it has significant benefits. The stigma is declined, and even years after you've received the intervention or the treatment, it's a positive experience and treatment. There's things like you're more likely to not go to jail, less likely to be homeless, more likely to have employment, education. So there's a lot of really, really good indicators that Canada has been following suit with. In BC, they have a system very similar. Theirs is called Foundry, but provincially ours is called Youth Wellness Hubs Ontario. And when we started this journey, it was called Access. It's rebranded. And so thankfully we haven't opened the door with all of our new signage, calling it Access, and then have to change all the signage. But our whole intention when we started along this journey was we were going to open ours with philanthropy, because years ago we had applied for provincial support to open and access open minds in Sarnia, Lambton, and we were declined funding. And then we said, well, we're going to do it without them, and we're going to plug ahead and make this open, because we know this is the best way for youth in our community to get the care that they need. Too many youth in our community are having to access their first intervention of mental health care in Bluewater Health's emergency department. That's not ideal. That's not a conducive environment. Our staff there are trained to be quick and reactive and responsive. And unless you're in a mental health crisis where you are at risk of harming yourself, perhaps, most of the youth coming in are not in that position. They need time, they need patience, they need relationship, they need understanding, as do their families. And that's not what emergency departments are designed for, and that's not what emergency staff are trained to do. So this is really going to ensure that youth and their families know it's here. It's also going to be those who are accessing treatments and care from St. Clair and CMHA, those will be redeployed. Those organizations will never cease to exist. They're so important in our community, but a true partnership of this magnitude for youth mental health has never happened in Sarnia-Lambton, and it's something we're very proud of. And we're very proud to rebrand as Youth Wellness Hubs Ontario, because with the philanthropic support, we were able to leverage provincial funding. So we have recently been notified that we are receiving core operational funding. So that whole notion of if you build it, they will come really is the case with Youth Wellness Hubs Ontario. So if you can go to the next slide for me, please. The one thing I should say, it's not a 24/7 location. It is 7 days a week, mostly 5 days a week, but still there'll be offerings in the evenings and weekends, because that's how youth access the things that they want to do. So this is just really a high level. It's hard to read, but it's really about engagement, relationships, all of the partner organizations. You won't be a patient of, not even called patients. As soon as you leave the hospital, you're a client, or you will be a shared client of those partner organizations. So if I come in and I'm meeting with Don, and he's my support for my my mental health, anxiety stuff that I'm struggling with. But when I'm talking to Don, I tell him, you know what, I also can't pay my rent and I'm homeless now. He's like, hold on a second, I'm going to go get Dorothy, and she, she's going to help with that piece. So it's not about the biggest thing. And this happened when you talked about my experience years and years ago in Toronto. This happened back then, and it's something that's needed to change for a long time, is specifically around children and youth, is the need, and also adults as well, but specifically for younger folks where they struggle to enter the system, if you will. Telling their story over and over and over and over again is a disservice to our children and our youth. Let them tell their story once, and then we respond and do what we're supposed to do as adults and protectors and care providers. And we also find that in the health system in general, that sometimes is the case as well. But this is a model of care that is proven. We can't wait for it to open. COVID really put a hamper on our construction schedule, but we are on track to open in the spring of 2023. I had a privilege of taking Mike Weir. Mike Weir is our major donor on this campaign. He donated $1 million to Youth Wellness Hubs Ontario, Sarnia-Lambton. I really don't like the name. I have to wrap my head around the new name, but Mike Weir was instrumental in the success of this project, and he was here with his family over Christmas, and we got to take him on a tour of how it's progressed so far. And all I can say is it's going to be remarkable. It's also a little bit bittersweet, because my role from a fundraising perspective is now over. So I've kind of, had to end my chapter with this story. But it's such a wonderful, wonderful project. We've had youth involved and engaged from day one. And they're, when you walk in and you see the design, that's all because youth said, we want this there, we want this there. And that was a really hard pill to swallow for some of the adults involved, that they wanted, we say sometimes we want to hear what the youth want, but we don't really listen. And I think something that's so remarkable about this project is we did listen, and we've let them lead the way. And this space was designed by them and for them. And it's really, really going to be exciting. As a mom, it's something that I'm really proud of. If my kids ever need service, that this is where I can take them. I'll go to the next slide, please. So this is, and I think I am probably going to start, I'm talking too fast, I apologize. Bluewater Health Helipad, this has been incredibly exciting. We announced just last week that we have fulfilled our fundraising campaign of $912,000. That's a lot of money for a cement pad, but it is a cement pad that is saving lives, and we already know it is saving lives. As of last week, over 6 flights had already taken place. One of them, a little boy that had to be transferred to sick kids. We actually never thought that. We knew that it was a possibility that sick kids or Toronto would be an end end, but we actually always thought London would be our quick, it's a 20-minute drive to London, or a flight to London rather, to Vic or St. Joe's there. Sarnia-Lambton was one of the only communities in all of Ontario without a helipad, and no disrespect to Wallaceburg, but Wallaceburg had a helipad and we did not. And we are a much larger center, and we have, through community support, been able to put this in place, and a significant partnership with County of Lambton, our sister foundation in Petrolia, as well as many individual and corporate donations that came in. We are currently waiting on some final approvals for nighttime flights. So lights were, again, you talk about COVID delays, specific lights for helipad flights have been delayed. So we're just waiting on that key piece. But as of right now, we are able to fly. I actually saw a flight come in about 3 weeks ago during snow, and I was like, I can't believe they're flying, but they're experts. I'm not flying in a helipad. But it's going to make such an impact and a difference, and already is. The fact that if one life is saved by one flight, it's well worth the investment. So we're really happy that we'll be able to be part of that. Can you go to the next slide, please? I think it's our video. Do I have time to show the video? Is that okay with everyone? This really speaks to the impact of the helipad.
Bluewater Health is one of the only hospitals in southwestern Ontario that does not have access to a helipad for critical care transportation. Having the helipad constructed for Bluewater Health is extremely important for our community to provide critical care access to patients who are needing that higher level of care and access to a trauma center, a burn center, or a children's hospital.
One of the examples where it could be particularly helpful is in patients who are in really bad traumas. Some of these patients actually get assisted on scene by the ambulance, and sometimes they actually call Orange to present directly to the scene, but Orange can't get there in a period of time and they need transfer to us. Well, what that usually means is we stabilize and try and get them out to a definitive care as soon as possible, which in general would be the London Trauma Service. In that case, if somebody has a severe head injury or head bleed and they can get to London, they can get surgery, that can mean that that person has a much better outcome. They're able to walk out of hospital versus having a significant neurologic injury where they might be impacted for the rest of their life.
As a nurse in the emergency department, it means that our patients get faster access to critical care. In a potential life or death situation, every minute counts.
At times we have patients who are critically ill, requiring fairly advanced care, and while we have a lot of resources locally to stabilize them, occasionally they have to be shipped out. What comes to mind, for example, is fairly complicated advanced multi-trauma patients. A helipad would provide us with the option of more expedited transportation. Currently what happens if we have to send someone by land, we have to send our own team with them from the hospital staff, in addition to taking out EMS service out of the county as well for transportation.
From the time that an ambulance crew is committed to a call to the time that they return to the community can be in excess of 3 hours. In the winter months, that time frame can certainly be extended into 4 and sometimes even 5 hours. A helipad at Bluewater Health for Sarnia-Lambton residents means faster access to critical care and specialty services in London and even places like Toronto.
As a mom and a future mom to another baby, it is comforting and reassuring to know that we have access to timely care with this new helipad. It allows us to gain access to care quicker for better outcomes for babies and children, even moms.
Working in the nursery, I see some pretty sick babies and babies that have gone for heart surgery that we've needed to send to sick kids. So being able to fly them to sick kids faster would mean everything.
I was a critical care flight paramedic with Orange, providing care to ill and injured patients across the region. Transport medicine is really a specialty unto itself. From a patient perspective, you're dealing with a lot of specialized trauma services, access to neurosurgery, pediatrics, specialized neonatology, access to burn centers, and really specialized care that's not available locally.
The County of Lambton has generously donated $400,000 to the construction of a helipad for Lambton County. We are truly grateful to them and all of the other donations that have come through for this project, but we still need your help. Together we can build a helipad for Sarnia-Lambton that will save lives. Please consider making a gift today.
So that was kind of our social media campaign that we were able to use to highlight the impact and also the call to action for people to give, and they certainly did. What's really interesting, or I think important for people in the community to understand, is mentioned in the video, is when we transfer by ambulance, it takes an ambulance out of our community. And we don't have a lot of ambulances across Lambton County, and Lambton County geographically is quite big. So you take one of those off the road and somebody in Corona needs an ambulance, they're waiting. And usually when you call for an ambulance, it's critical and it's a crisis. And we need to make sure that those resources that we need locally are staying locally. So the helipad has really, really helped with that and will continue to help with that. This is just a great little comment from Tara Bork. She's actually a double lung recipient. She has all of her specialty care and follow-up in Toronto, but we've worked with Tara before, and she was great to share that she was very excited that we were going to have helipad access in our community. So that's a great story. We have many, many grateful patient stories. And I think that's one of my favorite things in my role, is that I get to hear them. And they're not always perfect. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, we know that there's a lot of work to continue to be done to strengthen healthcare, to advance healthcare. But we really do have incredible people at Bluewater Health who provide compassionate care, kind care. We're truly thankful when people share through donations and also just through storytelling the impact that the care and compassion has had on their lives or their family members' lives. So I think that's important for us to be able to accept those stories. I think I have one more slide. This is just a very high level. Not only do we receive generous donations, but we host several signature events on an annual basis. And of course, the Dream Home, you'll see us at the top right corner cutting the ribbon at this year's home, golf tournaments, concerts. We have an annual gala. And these are really great ways for people in our community and companies in our community to come together. Companies like to sponsor events and get very well-deserved recognition for what they do. There was an incredible gala in our community last night for another charitable partner, and organizations can't do it without community support. That's just the reality of charities and nonprofits in our community, regardless if it's a hospital foundation or a Big Sisters or a United Way. We all rely on community support and generosity, and philanthropy takes the work that we're able to do, or the care that we provide, or the treatments that we offer to youth, adults, people with disabilities, the whole gamut. Our country relies on philanthropy and community generosity for so much. So we're truly grateful when people do choose Bluewater Health as a charity of choice. It speaks volumes, and hospital foundations across the country are probably facing some of our most important investments in the next several years, because a lot of us have been in campaigns previously where we've, like ours, everything new that was bought 12 years ago is now archaic. You think about a cell phone, or you think about an iPad, the second you turn it on, it's worth less than when you bought it. It's like a car. So we're always needing to upgrade and enhance technology. And we are truly thankful that the government supports the day-to-day operations of our hospitals and healthcare, and many of our organizations locally that are funded by the ministry, different ministries that support them. But capital investment is not funded by the government. And if they did, we'd have no money left. Healthcare is already the most expensive line in the federal budget and the provincial budget. So many hospital foundations, have to do the work that they do. Something we don't do in Sarnia, but I think is also important to recognize when you talk about advanced care, is philanthropy fully funds research in our country. Government support does not really invest in that either. So our cancer research, our Alzheimer's research, all of the different things that are taking place, many of them are funded. The Centre for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto just launched a $50 billion campaign, half of it going to frontline mental health, and the other half going to 50 million, not 50 billion, 50 million. Sick Kids is on $1 billion campaign, but it's one of those things where half of that is actually being allocated to research, because things change rapidly, and modalities and interventions change rapidly. And if it's your community hospital or a significant forensic mental health institution in Toronto, if you can provide the best care for your patients, your families, and your community, that's what you would want to do. And I think that's what you would hope for your families and your colleagues. So really just wanted to, I guess, end by saying we're so grateful that people choose to support Bluewater Health with their charitable donations, from a volunteerism perspective, from a PPE donation, from the sharing of a story. It all combined makes a significant difference, and our hospital is stronger and healthier because of the people that live in Lambton County. So I'm happy to answer any questions if